everybody, and welcome to this episode of Real Life Sex. I am your host, Danielle Love, and here at Real Life Sex, we are here to educate, heal, and inspire you to take control of your divine sovereignty over how you choose to interact in your intimate relationships, both with yourself and other people, and also to explore that without shame, guilt, or feeling any type of negativity about what your true desires really are in life. So I have an amazing, amazing guest. I'm going to read you her bio very quickly, and we're going to get into her very cool story. So Jay is proudly queer and a lover of all things non-traditional. Me too. She is passionate about helping others to boldly build expansive and aligned lives while also practicing what she preaches. So Jay, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. And thanks for having me. I love what you mentioned when you were explaining what you do. I know it, but when you like verbalize it, it's super powerful. I love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, that's why we're here speaking in the first place, but just kind of breaking down these traditional oppressive paradigms, especially as it comes to women and female relating human beings who feel like they need to kind of just fit themselves into this mold of, I call it the missionary mold. And again, not anything wrong with that mold. If that really is your jam and you love that, great. But I think the whole important thing is that really the end all be all, or is that what you think you have to do? And so kind of breaking that open. So
yeah, that's too funny and so good.
So speaking of, so Jay and I were talking off of the camera, and she said a couple things that I thought were great. So she kind of has a progression in her own life where she's gone from her words, which I love, chronically monogamous, which is a disease in my opinion as well, to solo poly. And so really just if you would be so kind as to speak on your progression as a human being, your evolution and kind of understanding your own pleasures and desires, and from where you were chronically monogamous to now at the solo poly point.
Yeah, for sure. So chronically monogamous just says it all. I was in relationships. I was never married, but was in long-term relationships from the ages of 16 to 28. In long-term relationships, anywhere from like 8 years into several years. So, and they were back to back in those timeframes. And I didn't really know anything beyond that, obviously. I ascribed to, a lot of what we see as normalized, like in the media, movies, advertisements, just in general, right? Like monogamy is the thing that's largely normalized in our culture. And after my last relationship that ended a couple of years ago, I realized, and I was at a point where I needed to just be single and celibate. And I told myself I was going to do it for at least a year. Like no dating, nothing, just me to like really get in touch with myself and to better understand like what I really wanted, where I was going, because I'd always been intertwined somehow with someone else and building things with other people and not on my own, like for the entirety of my adulthood. So I did that. I was single and celibate for a year. I didn't date at all. That year in hindsight was an incredible year. It was painful, like, because I was healing from the breakup and was very much in love with the woman that I was with. But through the healing that I did and focusing on, learning myself and everything else, I was able to build, new friendships that I still have to this day that are really enriching and like vital to where my life is currently. And I got really in touch like with myself spiritually and just all of the things. Like it was a really good year. And in hindsight, because that was only 2 years ago, actually, that was 2 to 3 years ago. In hindsight, it was the perfect precursor for COVID, where a lot of people were unintentionally celibate and single. But after that year of celibacy and singlehoodness, singledom, whatever you want to call it, I decided to start dating. And like, I hadn't done that before either, like on dating apps or anything. It's the first time I'd done that. But I decided to do it like from an angle of like not wanting to get into anything serious, like just wanting to have fun and explore things. Like I didn't want commitment, right? And I wanted to approach it from an honest place with people. So that's what I did. And right off the bat, like I ended up dating two people simultaneously. They both knew that. I ended up dating one for quite some time, for just under a year. And then the other one, we're still friends actually. And yeah, that's just kind of how it went for a while. I dated a little bit on and off, like, and now for like the last year or so, partially because of COVID, but I have been single still and not really dating or interested in dating or even like connecting with others on an intimate level. Just, I've been celibate again. It's been almost a year. So that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And that's such a beautiful progression in what I feel like is you honoring yourself. I mean, really at the core of it all is saying, you kind of said I've been enmeshed in these really long-term relationships where I imagine, again, I could be wrong, that you weren't necessarily maybe centering your own desires, maybe not centering what was truly pleasurable for you, probably in both a sexual and other aspects of the relationship as well. And for whatever reason. And so I guess a good question is for, I'm sure a lot of women and female identifying humans have had this experience, but maybe haven't had like that wake up or maybe like an aha where they're like, I do need to take this time for myself, and doing this for myself is a massive gift. And it's a beautiful, benevolent act of self-love. Was there anything that kind of pushed you over that edge or did you just knew like, this is what has to happen? Like you just knew it. How did that go?
Oh, yeah. I love that question. It happened in two parts. One piece I probably should have mentioned that's pretty important to the story and my story is that I was formerly like in heteronormative relationships as well. And what ended my longest relationship was realizing that I was gay and like exiting that dynamic because I was also beginning to fall in love with my ex-girlfriend. And so there was a really big intuitive thing that happened at that point when I left that heteronormative relationship, because it was like a marriage. It just wasn't actually married, but everything else involved was by all accounts a marriage. So it was a really, really big thing for me to like walk away from that and completely rebuild my life. So that was an intuitive thing. It kind of started there. I started actively like going to therapy at that point to try and heal from that dynamic. And then the second part is after the relationship ended with my ex-girlfriend, that was a really huge intuitive thing that I knew like with every fiber of my being that I'd reached a point that I had to be on my own. And that, you know, of course there was dynamics in that relationship as well that became like toxic, that we were like on and off again for that part of the year. And actually it was because of, and this relates to the non-traditional lifestyle I'm kind of living now, but I developed a crush on someone during that relationship and was honest about it with my ex-girlfriend and told her nothing happened between myself and this other person, but I wanted to be honest. Well, that did not go over well. And what ensued over the next 8 months was just not good. It was really bad. And yeah, at the end of that, I just got to a point because it was so toxic for both of us, even though we really, really loved each other, that I had to be by myself. Like I hadn't done that yet. And I knew I had like patterns of codependency, and I was working on that through therapy. Like I'd been doing it for about 2 years at that point, but just things weren't connecting in that dynamic. And there was a lot of shame that was being brought into the equation where I felt like something was wrong with me because of like what I either wanted or boundaries that like differences in boundaries that we had and different ideas around what was acceptable with like attraction to others, for example, right? Like I never asked for permission to do anything. It never did, but it just, like I said, didn't go over well. We had differing opinions on what that looked like. And yeah, that's what ultimately led to this huge epiphany that I just knew like I couldn't anymore, no matter how much like I loved her and vice versa, that I had to be by myself and like figure out my own shit because I had yet to do that and it was time.
Yeah. And that's such an important point, is that it doesn't matter what age you are. That's something we all need to do in our lives, right? And of course, no one's going to force us to do it. It's not like a teacher is going to come or a parent's going to come along and be like, have you taken the time to get to know what your true desires in an intimate relationship are and really understanding your body and your attraction to other people? Like, no, unfortunately, fairy godmother is going to come down and like kind of lay that work out for you. But it is so integral to us existing in the world in a way that feels truthful for us and aligned for us. And so I think it's amazing that you did that. And a couple of things that kind of came up while you were saying that I wanted to touch on is one, and this is something that I teach, and my husband and I have been doing like these lives every Friday, just about little like relationship dynamics that have helped us over the last 15 years. And I think one for folks that no matter if you're just starting a relationship now or you've been in a relationship, I think it is so important to speak on what your opinions are on being attracted to other people, because there's very like less than, I would say probably less than 1% of the human population who really, really feels like monogamy is truly the only like best way for them, like on a deep soul level, and never has an attraction to another human being once they're coupled with another person. Like that's just, again, I'm not saying never, but I'm saying it's so far away from the reality for most people. So having that conversation, you know, like with my husband, it's like, I'll point out girls that I think are attractive to him, and he'll point out guys to me that he'll think that he's like, I never know who you're going to be attracted to. What about that guy? Like, because I have I don't have a type. Like it's very like, it's very like whatever, it's energetic for me. But that dynamic between us being able to share that with each other is so joyous and joyful. But if you have a partner, like you mentioned, where it's like, not only are you not allowed to be attracted to someone, you're not allowed to express that you're attracted to someone. And if you do, all shit's going to hit the fan. That's something that we have the power as humans to communicate early on if we're in that spot, and like kind of being able to do that. And I'm sure now that you've come down this path, that's something that you're probably much more apt to speak on with people right up front. Has that changed that communication, I'm assuming?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And no, everything you said was so true and is 100% accurate. I get off on a tangent talking about like what is normalized in our culture about like attraction to other people and jealousy, and it's not for me at all. But yes, absolutely. That is something now that like I've realized right through that year of being celibate, and then in the time since and dating with other people, that, you know, what I'm looking for, at least in the phase I'm at now in my life, is very specific. And so I know that like I have to advocate for my own needs now, and it's my job to communicate things. And so I do that up front. And that's something that like, because I know that one, I don't want to be committed to one person, and that I'm not looking to build like a long-term relationship currently, nor do I want someone to be like super involved in my life. Like I just mentioned needs, and I've come to believe that I am responsible for meeting my own. So I mentioned a lot of friends, and all of the friends that I have around me like help meet different needs in terms of, support, connection, things like that. When it comes to what I'm looking for with like an intimate partner, it's just physical intimacy for the most part, in addition to actual connection, because I need that. I can't be physically intimate and not have that connection there first. I'm totally losing my train of thought on where I was going.
I mean, everything you're saying is very valid and on topic. So yeah.
Thank you. I realize now where I was going is that, yeah, so that's something I like in my profiles, for example, like that it's very cut and dry and upfront. Like, this is what I'm looking for. This is not what I'm looking for. When I'm talking with people, like getting to know them, what they're looking for is one of the first things that I'm wanting to find out. Someone that wants like a relationship or something serious. I've learned even since the last relationship with one of the people I was dating, is when two people want something different, ultimately, like it can work for a little while, but ultimately it can become a problem. So I've gotten to a point where, like, if someone wants to be in a serious relationship and that's their longer term objective, I'm not willing to really engage with it, because I find that sometimes they hope that you may change your mind. Like, if they really like you.
Yep.
Not everyone, but that was one of my experiences. So yes, I'm more concerted in the questions that I ask, and also what I share up front, because I want to filter out things right from the jump to like avoid all of the things I've learned in the past, because they were painful and long lessons. So
yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes, and I'm sure I'll butcher it, is that pain is one of the best teachers, even if we're not looking for it to be the case. Yeah, no, and that what you just said, kind of, to me, what that is you've set up a very beautiful boundary around what you are willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept, and whether it's on the dating profile or wherever it is, you set that boundary up and you respect and honor your own boundary, and then by doing that you teach other people how to do that as well. And so that's just super, super powerful. Another question that, from what you said, that I would like to kind of hear your take on is having that realization that you are attracted to women after being in a heteronormative relationship for however many years that you were. And for me, everybody has their own experience, but I have a lot of women say, I've been married for this many years. Clients, I definitely know that I have some sort of attraction to females, but I have absolutely no idea, like, am I a lesbian? I'm like, first of all, you can just, if you need a label, that's fine. But actually, I always say labels are helpful for like vials of insulin, but everything else, they kind of get messy. So for me, I knew I was attracted to females at like 12 years old. I made a post about it, months ago. Like it was a physical, it was like, oh my God, like that's very clear to me. And I also had the luxury and the beauty of being in a home where none of like, no alternative lifestyles were ever shamed. Like I just never was around that. And I realized what a gift that is now as an adult, that teaches other people that have essentially all been traumatized from their childhood about any number of, normal paradigms that are the only acceptable way that things can be. But I knew that. So did you always know that you were attracted to women, or was that like something that you had pushed back, or did you just like get out of that heteronormative relationship and you're like, no more of that? Like, how did that occur?
Yeah. So I can remember being attracted to other like women and girls really early. I can remember it as early as like at least 10. To be honest, I had such a disconnection with my body and my intuition largely until I left that relationship, that longer term one, the heteronormative one. And that was like the undoing of everything, like in a good way. But before that, I just really was not connected with my body and myself in that way, to even register that. So like, I remember having crushes on a lot of like either friends or like friends of friends growing up, like celebrities, like even most of the posters in my room when I was younger were of women. And I always just thought like it was normal, and be that like, other women are just like attracted to other women.
Because I saw I would go to say that is normal. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
normal. It's just that the society that you were and we were being brought up said that it wasn't. But in fact, I would say the majority of people that I know, especially women, had the same exact experience. They just never really spoke on it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I mean is like, I don't know, in movies and even shows, like
Yes.
I remember watching a reality TV show with one of my friends that she loves. And in this show, and this is recent, this was like in the last couple of months, but it irked me. And it was one of the housewife shows where they like went on a trip and two of the friends, like they all got really drunk. And two of the, like, as soon as they started drinking is when two of the girls that like liked each other, they started like getting intimate or like flirting. But it was only once they started drinking that they almost made it seem like that's what brought it on.
Right.
And that normally otherwise like they're straight, right? And so that irks the hell out of me because it makes it seem like, oh yeah, like when you're drunk or whatever, it's totally cool like to just hook up with women, like you're heteronormative otherwise, where it's like so much more complex than that. It's not how that really works. There's something else going on there. If that's what's going down when you're drinking, like you're repressing something, frankly.
Coming out just like it does when
Exactly.
you drink. Yes.
Yeah. So that's how kind of, because of things I saw in like media or whatever, I just thought like, oh yeah, like I just am admiring her beauty. I guess I didn't necessarily note it as attraction. It was like just admiring other women's beauty or the girl's beauty. And that's like a normal thing. Like girls do this, women do this. Well, anyway, when I was in my early 20s, I did have a friend actually that I developed an insane crush on. And I very clearly realized that there was something else there that I was obviously at least bi-curious. I never did explore it. Like I never told her or my ex at the time because I didn't have the tools to communicate that nor the bravery. But at that point, I realized like, okay, there's something else here. But I was in a relationship with my ex who was male and didn't pursue anything. Well, a couple years later, it just happened like with my ex-girlfriend, like out of nowhere. We were getting to know each other because we worked together, and in about 2 weeks of working together, I like had a huge epiphany, and I realized it because like I was so attracted to her that like I noticed my body like responding and like getting really nervous around her and honestly even aroused.
Yeah.
And that's why when I realized like, oh shit, like there's like, this is a thing that like is undeniable. What am I going to do with this information? But it took 2 weeks before I realized like, oh my God, like I'm very obviously attracted to her, and I really like her too. And yeah, it just developed at that point, and I decided to explore it and I didn't have a choice at that point to repress it and to not pay attention because it was so intense. And that's how that came to be.
Oh, that's amazing. And so many women will experience something similar to that. And I always say your body does not lie. Your body is going to tell you exactly what's true, but we have become so tame. I like to call it tame, that when that physical reaction happens and it's not in alignment with the heteronormative traditional paradigms, women especially become very fearful and ashamed, and then immediately begin to internalize some sort of blame about it on themselves. What is wrong with me? Why am I feeling this way? This isn't normal. This isn't okay. And it becomes this deluge of like self-deprecation, when the opposite, which is what you did, which was kind of sitting with it, allowing it to occur, and then exploring it with like compassion versus judgment, is the way that we need to, I think all of us need to honor ourselves in understanding who we truly are and what we truly desire. And I'm just really glad that you did that, because we probably wouldn't even be sitting here talking today if you didn't. But no, I mean, it's just amazing. You have so much, I mean, you probably know this, but you have so much to teach just through your own experiences, because so many women, and I mean, you're still in, I mean, are you in your early 30s or even there yet?
Like 30. Yeah, I'll be 31 next month.
So like, and I'm 39. So it's just like, there are so many women that are your age, my age, older, that have never given themselves that kind of grace and that kind of space to evolve and explore without judgment. And it literally, not to sound cliche, but it will change your entire life for all the best ways possible when you give yourself that type of love. So I love hearing you speak on it. And so speaking on that, we talked about it with solo poly. And the first time you and I chatted a little while ago, you had mentioned that. And I'm not super familiar with all the labels. I always say ethical non-monogamy is like this huge blanket term that you can just throw over anything, any non-traditional paradigm, blah, 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 blah. And so there's so many different little facets and ways that different people identify, and none of them are wrong, to be clear. And so I'm always interested in learning kind of how you where you're at. You say solo poly, kind of what does that encompass as a way of life for you in your current paradigm, knowing that it can change at any time?
Yeah, and there are so many labels. Like, it's funny because when and if like someone, if you go on Tinder, for example, and I don't know if it's the same way, like if you're matching with men or not, but I can tell you, at least from the perspective of a lesbian, that all the labels are everywhere. Yes. Like, and that's how you'll learn. Otherwise, it'll like, oh, what the hell is that? And then look it up. Yeah, it's just like, so it's absolutely a spectrum, just like sexuality is. But for me, and the reason why I use solo poly like as a describer is that in solo poly, you are your primary partner. So you're responsible for meeting your own needs ultimately. And like, it's going to look a little bit different for everyone and how they practice it. But to me, it's, if I have partners, whatever they might be, whether it's like, lovers, or maybe we're a little bit more connected than that, whatever, like there's still going to be components of like ethical non-monogamy in there, at least for me, which is like whoever I'm involved with, they know what's going on, like that I am dating other people, if I'm having sex with other people, for our own sexual health. Even getting into like when I first ventured into this, both people that I was dating at the time, like one was really closed off and they were fine with it, but they didn't want to know about like when I was seeing the other person. And like, I tried that for a little while and then I told them like, that doesn't really work for me. Like, I'm not, like I don't want to hide anything, if it makes you feel some type of way, then that's something we can talk about. And then the other person like they're doing their own thing 100%, like exploring their sexuality and like hooking up with people and just living their best life. And we would share that, again, mostly for the safety part. But sometimes they would even like get a little jealous about the other person I was dating, but that was something that like we would talk about. But at the end of the day, like I am the one that has the authority over how things go, right? So like I ended things with one of my partners because they did want something different. And it just wasn't working for me anymore. So like we were always dating with that impermanence of this can end at any time because we both know we want something different. Like we're here because we like each other and we enjoy each other's company, but like there's no obligation and there's no commitment here. Like, and I might change my mind tomorrow and vice versa. And then this is done. Yeah. So very honest, forthcoming. And then again, like I'm the one that decides at the end of the day, this isn't working for me, or I want to deepen this or whatever, because I'm the one responsible for meeting my needs. And the last thing is usually you don't necessarily like intermingle things. So for example, like someone might do this and be more serious with someone or even multiple partners, but they may never actually live together, share finances together. Like they could be committed to each other and live separately, is the other thing, which definitely appeals to me because I don't think I want to live with anyone anytime soon. And I don't want that sort of commitment and entwinement, I guess.
Yeah, cohabitation is real.
Oh yeah, for sure. But hopefully that makes sense.
It makes all the sense to me. And so, I mean, and that's kind of why I'm doing this, because I think I feel like the right person to be having these conversations, because no matter who I've interviewed so far, because to me, what makes sense is someone honoring themselves. And I have no preconceived notions about what that should look like. So because I have done the work and lived the life that I've lived, where I don't place any shoulds on anyone, because to me, it's a fairly high level of insanity of believing that you have some level of control over the way someone else needs to be structuring their lives. Talk about toxic, like that's toxic. Yes. And all that being said is I think there's a huge liberation in knowing that about yourself. And so, I mean, even not the same thing, but just an example for me is when I was 17, I was dating a guy who was 21. I was extremely mature, living with type 1 diabetes, losing your father. Like might as well. I mean, we are actually in touch now. He and I know his wife, he's got children. We're friends. Like we're on Facebook. We text each other, nothing weird. My husband's met his wife, the whole thing. All that to be said is that when we met, he was moving to Miami. I lived in Philadelphia at the time. I knew that he was moving to Miami in a year. There was like right off the bat when we met, he told me that was the case. He was getting ready to move down there for a job after he got out of college, and he already had it set up. And even though we both knew that there was no permanence to it, we still lived in the moment. And for that whole year, we had so much fun together. And not to like say it wasn't painful when he left. It was, of course it was. We had developed a really, strong connection, and we had a lot of fun together. And at the same time, we both had that knowledge of the impermanence of it, and just owning that and accepting it made the living in the experience just more joyful. And I think that so many people like to get this, like their claws in something or some level, like some illusion of permanence, when the reality of it is there's nothing that's permanent, nothing. There's literally nothing ever in the entire history of the universe that's permanent. But all that to be said is that it's illusory. And loosening up your grip on that is so liberating if you're just willing to explore that. And the dynamics, is that a word, dynamicism? Like being dynamic, because you just said like, well, that's what I like now. And I'm like, I always say this, like, this is what I'm enjoying now. But I put no like labels or boxes around myself that are like, well, this is the way that it needs. Now that I like this now, I know that this is what I'm going to like or bring me pleasure or desire for the rest of my life. Like, no, that's not how that works. And because so many humans are committed to that paradigm, that's one of the main reasons why so many people are unhappy. It's like, well, I used to like this used to be like, like you've changed, and that's human. Like that's existence in and of itself. So just hearing you speak on your flexibility, your fluidity in that is powerful. Like, I'm not sure if like most people I speak to don't have this level of awareness around giving themselves that gift of being without expectations. And it's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, you know what? When you were like saying these things, I resonated with it, which is you were talking about the impermanence and being able to live in that space. I think that because of what's normalized in culture and even our family dynamics and like patriarchy and everything, is that things are like a black and white. Like, you're either here or you're there. And what I really like about not just solo poly, but I guess being in touch with yourself, being honest with yourself, being brave, and all of that is, it lends to the fact that all of this, like with love, connection, intimacy, the things fundamentally that we need as humans, that everyone needs and strives to have, it's not black and white, and there's so much nuance, and it does change, like it's super fluid. And we miss so much by ascribing to that narrative and that paradigm and not honoring ourselves, kind of like you were saying, and thinking, okay, well, it's supposed to be this way, or, I'm supposed to do this or whatever, and taking on the shoulds, which aren't rooted in reality. I also hate and dislike shoulds because it's not based in reality ultimately. the truth is, like, when you allow yourself to open up and sit and see yourself, and to not judge or to have shame or guilt or whatever, there's just so much there. And like, when you lean into it and explore it, however it looks like, whether it's super subtle or small, whatever, you don't have to burn your life to the ground like I have and did. But it just allows for so much more fullness and like richness in your experience. And it also can like help other people, because you start to change what is normal and what people should do. I mean, I'll add that like I'm super blessed and grateful that like when I went from being in a heteronormative long-term basically marriage to leaving that like completely behind, and like everyone in my life was supportive. Like when I came out to my mom, my family, like there was no like pushback or issues with that. And even how things have evolved over the years, like, again, nothing but support with the people that I know and love in my life, and vice versa. I have other friends, and I think it probably helps paint my own reality of what is normal, like that are happily and proudly single, or practicing some form of solo poly on their own, whether or not they label it in that way. And like own what they want unapologetically. And like, we just need so much more of that, especially with women and those that even non-binary folks, because that's just its own act of not defiance, but I mean, in a way with the patriarchy it is, but just it's different than what we've done for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, I feel like you and I could talk about this at length for many hours because again, there's just so many aspects of it to explore. But I want to kind of like, let's go towards, because we also mentioned, like we were talking off recording about honoring your pleasure, right? In many different ways, honoring your desires. And so you had mentioned something to me that I had not heard of, but I'm actually going to go explore now after we're done speaking, called Orgasmic Meditation. Mm-hmm. And I don't know exactly like what we were speaking on that made us bring that up. Probably about, for me, I think I was saying something about how I like to teach women who don't ever look at their vaginas, their whole entire area, that they've never, I often tell women to go get a mirror and to go light a candle and to, you know, really get to know themselves. And that and especially in heteronormative relationships for females, I was talking about the penis kind of being a multi-use tool that has a lot of different, you know, it's for going to the bathroom, it's for ejaculation, it's for all different things, where the clitoris is just for pleasure. There's really nothing. And so you'll have a man or a male that's used to having 4,000 nerve endings, and a female in her clitoris who has 8,000. And if the only experience you have is the male that comes in that's usually going way too hard and way too fast, that for the woman who's unwilling to, like you say, be responsible for her own pleasure, understand that she is the sole most important person who needs to understand what physically gives her pleasure, so that if and when that man or other person comes in way too hard and way too fast and it's not pleasurable at all, a lot of women will pretend like it's great and then be like, what's going on, right? And then that in and of itself, that whole performative aspect is so far from truth and honoring yourself that it's ridiculous. But all that being said is that orgasmic meditation that you brought up sounds like a really great practice to like overcome that. And so talk to me a little bit about it. Like, how did you discover it? And, you know, give me a little bit of background, because I think there are a lot of women that need to give this a shot.
Yes, 100%. So I learned about it originally I listened to and observed tons of information. And this one I learned about from a podcast. So there's a website, like if you look it up, Orgasmic Meditation, or they call it Oming as well. And the premise of it is to, I guess, engage with, like for women in particular, but also their partners, if they do this with a partner, is to engage more with being able to identify what feels good, and communicating that as well, so that it can potentially open up like a pathway of sorts with being able to do that on a more consistent basis. But I think more than anything else, it helps with like opening and exploring your sexuality and moving from like being repressed and not knowing how to like vocalize these things, not having the tools to do it, and moving away from everything that you mentioned into being more direct and taking, I don't want to say accountability, that's the wrong word, but taking like domain over your own pleasure.
It is. Yeah. This is like, this is it. This is what you really, right. That's all you really got for yourself. So
right. Yeah. Exactly. But when you look it up and read through it or even listen to it, because I know I'm sure there's other podcasts that talk about it too. It can seem very intimidating, especially for anyone that's not in a place where they've explored that stuff before, or like gotten to a place where they're more comfortable with their body and like learning how to love it or accept it or whatever. It can be very intimidating. But it's such a powerful tool of exploration, to actively work through that with someone that, you know, you trust, you know, love, have that space with, whatever. Before COVID, they actually, like, there was pockets in certain cities where like you could go to someone that practices and it would be like a stranger that would do this with you. And the objective isn't to like have an orgasm when you do this practice. It's to witness, to be present. Those are the main things. But I'll explain it a little bit. Practice is two people. Someone with a vagina and a vulva is typically going to be the person that is receiving. And then whoever the person that I guess is giving, or whatever phrase you want to use for it, their job is to like very gently, what's the word I'm looking for?
Stimulate?
Stroke, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, stimulate. There you go. Stimulate's a better word. Stimulate the clitoris, and like to do it in the same way, like for 15 minutes. Like you set a timer, and you can put on like music, like calming music, but it's 15 minutes. And there needs to be some form of light. It doesn't need to be bright, but that way the person can witness you, like, and they're close, like they're within like, I don't know, like not even a foot of your vulva and your vagina. But like afterwards, you're supposed to both talk about it and what they witnessed happening for you, like in your body, how you were responding, whatever. And then the receiver is supposed to like explain what they were feeling and what they noticed. And then that's it. Like it's a practice of stillness, engagement, all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, for me, even when you were describing it to me, what it sounds like, which again is so incredibly powerful, especially between two people who are desiring to have a strong connection and understanding of one another, is you're essentially, the way I'm interpreting it, is you're forming your own way of communicating between yourselves. And even if you didn't necessarily have the language to express it prior, by engaging in this practice, you're essentially going to develop the language because you're doing the practice. And then afterwards, the whole kind of point is to verbalize and speak. And even if you don't necessarily have the words, you'll find them. Like you'll find yourself probably finding them because you've just experienced something that you're essentially needing to verbalize so that the other person, and it's very two-way street. It's very, both people have a participant role. And I just can't fathom, well, I mean, of course, I'm sure there are cases, but like if each person is committed to this and having this experience, that it wouldn't be massively kind of groundbreaking, or at least pleasurable, or at least eye-opening, expansive in some way for each person that's in that in that dynamic. So it's just, I have not done that, but I'm going to go look it up. And, you know, even after 15 years with my husband, it's like, I mean, why wouldn't we do that? Like, even though we already have a relationship and a communication and a language between us, like, but it's always other things to look at and explore. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Well, and what you mentioned, because when we were talking off the recording, it's been a little while since I've done this. It's been like a year, 2 years and a half, give or take. But I do remember when I did this, and my romantic partner and I did it to each other, like we switched. And afterwards, because it's so intimate, like so intimate. And there's this like agreement that needs to take place between the two of you. It's almost like a sacred thing, honestly. Totally. And afterwards, there's such a connection, like it's intense and it's super powerful. Like, I mean, you can have sex after that or whatever, but because the objective isn't necessarily to orgasm, and you're not allowed to go faster, like you go super, super slow. And it's amazing too, how arousing that is and how the body responds, and being able to witness that in someone else. And then they also have their own realizations at the same time. It's just this very potent shared experience. So it's super, super powerful for connection, like on the deepest and most intimate level. To be seen.
Imagine. I mean, not to be like TMI, but like I'm mildly aroused just talking about it. Like I know, probably a lot of women would be like, oh my God, I can't say that. But it's like, yes, of course, thinking about that is arousing. Like, and I think that's just in being able to admit that, because for me, that's not abnormal. But I have a group of women that I'm in a mastermind with, and I'll say sexual stuff like, just like, see, you just saying that like makes me feel liberated, because I would never say that, but it's true. And and so that's kind of another thing that I'm like hoping to impart on more women, is to just like, if you're aroused, say you're aroused. Like you don't have to, if you want to, you can be like Megan Thee Stallion and say all the stuff, or you can just say, I'm aroused. And like, that is giving truth to how you're feeling without shame. And that self-expression without feeling like you need to like contract because of something that's, you know, so natural, is really so important to everything, I think, in the whole entire world. So yeah, I mean, again, like I said, we could keep talking. I was like, is there any other like experience or story, or I don't know, wisdom or thing that you would want folks that are watching this to take on with them, past what other amazing gems you've already dropped on us?
You know, that's a big question for me to answer. I guess the biggest thing, one of the biggest things, is to not, I don't want to say to not be afraid, but when you recognize something comes up or keeps coming up, whatever it might be that falls in the spectrum, engage with it and like work through it and on it. So what I mean is like, you know, if you notice that something's not working in a relationship for you, or maybe the way you're pursuing dating isn't working anymore, or like the sex you're having isn't working, or whatever, maybe you're curious about something that you want to try, or you want to burn shit to the ground.
Yes. I mean, fire is cleansing. I mean, sometimes we just want to burn everything down, and that's a reality, and that's okay. Like, it's more than okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, you know, none of us are really given the tools to learn how to navigate this stuff. And especially as women, to have permission to do so. And, you know, the experience may vary. And, you know, you're allowed to explore that stuff and to claim something different than what you currently have. You don't need permission from anyone else. Like, you can give it to yourself and you are also responsible for meeting your own needs. That's not the sole responsibility of one person, or even several people. Like if you know something's not working and it's bothering you enough that you are paying attention to it, then do something about it, like, and explore it. Like it doesn't need to be a huge thing, but engage with the curiosity, because you never know where it might lead and how much fuller your life can be as a result, to be authentic.
So powerful. And I don't normally like plug my programs, like, right. But the thing is that's kind of what the sacred sexual energy experience is all about is honoring, exploring, non-judgmental, compassionate, safe exploration of all of these things. And then being in a community of other people, women or female identifying people who are the whole kind of the core of it is you're going to need to express it. And that's how you're going to grow. You're going to express it both to yourself, but then you're going to come into this really carefully curated, trauma-informed container where we're all going to share these expressions, maybe for the first time. And that, like, again, you just said, you don't know how just saying it is going to change the energy of your whole entire life. So I'm just going to put that out there because that's what we're doing. And I'm just excited about it.
So. No, you know what? It is so powerful. Like even talking about this, and this is stuff that like I've talked with others about and I'm very open about, but talking about this stuff is very powerful. Like you can feel it in your body. It's a powerful act and a very affirming one too. And everyone deserves to have that experience. Like we should be able to abandon the shoulds and the black and white of what things should look like or how they're meant to exist, because all of that's bullshit. Like you're allowed to create things on your terms, to live life in the way that you want. People don't need to validate it for you or to approve of it. Like you only have one life and it's up to you to make the most of it. Like it's scary and whatever, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that's kind of one of the things I've written it in multiple posts. I'm like, binaries are bullshit. Like they just are. Like they just are. And like you said, it's not necessarily easy, but I always say it's like, is it easy to stay stuck in a paradigm that you might just be in for the rest of your life because you were unwilling to just step a little bit outside and say, this doesn't feel right for me? Like what to me, which sounds more scary, is definitely clearly the latter. So I'm really glad that even hearing someone speak on it, not that we're that far away in age, but it's like, people are like, oh, the younger generation. It's like, I am so inspired by people who are younger than me. I feel like the world is going to do way better as more young people continue to come up, because listen, at 30 years old, a lot of women are already in a relationship and a career and a situation where they're like, oh shit, I'm 30 and I could be doing this for another 60 years. And then I won't even get, mental health issues, depression, all kinds of things, because they're not willing to speak out. So thank you for speaking out. Yeah. I mean, that's really all. I mean, thank you for speaking out on this. Because
thank you for hosting and having these conversations. And the whole reason we connected to begin with, this was completely off topic from when we initially had like a coffee chat and got into this realm. But this work is so important and so needed. And it is really just helping like the current generations of women to like unlearn this stuff. But it almost even opens up more of a pathway for the people that are coming into their own, and and it helps normalize this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So thank you, Jay. Thank you. And for everyone else out there, I hope that you learn. I mean, I learned about orgasmic meditation. So I hope that you learned something about that, about paradigms, about honoring yourself, about giving yourself the gift of grace and love and self-care to explore yourself and what brings you joy and pleasure and what your desires are, because there's so much good stuff in this one interview. So thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing everybody on the next episode of Real Life Sex. Have a great day.